Here the ocean thins to a whisper, a necklace of sand and coral just beneath the waves, where maps draw a dotted line and poems draw a bridge. Between Rameswaram and Manar, between faith and physics, a question surfaces. Who laid these stones time, tide, or hands? Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're wading into the waters of Ram Setu, also known as Adam's Bridge. It's this 30-mile-long chain of shoals, so shallow it can stop ships and, well, as we'll find out, start arguments that echo through history and science.
Yeah, absolutely. Our mission on this deep dive is really to explore this captivating structure from, well, every angle possible. We'll look at its physical reality of powerful stories from different traditions and, of course, the scientific inquiries and intense controversies surrounding its very existence.
Yeah.
We want to help you understand what makes this specific spot so profoundly significant. It really does bridge faith and physics in a way few other places on Earth do.
Right. Let's start by just laying out the basics. Where exactly is this? If you picture it, it's like a geographical dotted line in the shallow sea. Ram Setu is a 30-mile, that's about 48-kilometer chain of shoals. It stretches from Pamban Island, specifically Dhanushkodi, off India's southeastern coast, all the way to Manar Island off the northwestern coast of Sri Lanka. Visually, it kind of acts like a natural barrier, doesn't it? Separating the Gulf of Mannar from the Palk Strait.
It does. And something truly striking about this ridge is its physical makeup. It's primarily these natural limestone shoals, coral sands, patch reefs, that sort of thing. Most of it is just a few feet under the water, maybe 1 to 10 meters deep. This means parts are actually visible in satellite images, which, clearly show its distinct, almost causeway-like shape.
That shape is key, isn't it?
It is. And historically, local legends and even old temple records suggest parts of it were once walkable. Apparently until a major breach happened around 1480, after some kind of powerful storm. It really does look like a causeway drawn by a careful hand, wouldn't you say?
It absolutely does. That visual resemblance, it just immediately pulls you into the ancient stories, right? It suggests that maybe for millions of people, it's not just currents and corals, but something, well, far more profound.
Exactly, and that's where its spiritual importance truly comes into play. For Hindus, this is Ram Setu, the Bridge of Rama.
Right, from the Ramayana.
Precisely. The ancient Sanskrit epic, the Ramayana, tells this incredible story of Lord Rama. He's this legendary prince who, way back in the mythological Treta Yuga period, some texts date back over 2 million years, he commissioned this massive causeway.
Built by his Vanara army, the monkey army.
Often translated that way, yes. Or perhaps forest men, led by the divine architect Nala. They supposedly built this bridge in just 5 days from India to Lanka to rescue Rama's abducted wife, Sita, from the demon king Ravana. And the legend even mentions stones that floated when Rama's name was written on them.
Floating stones. Okay, we'll definitely circle back to that.
We should. But stepping back a bit, looking at the bigger picture, you find other significant narratives woven into this landscape too. Islamic tradition, for instance, dating back to at least the 9th century A.D., calls it Adam's Bridge.
Adam's Bridge, how does that connect?
Well, their name is linked to the belief that Adam, the first man, crossed this bridge. He supposedly crossed from Sri Lanka, where Adam's Peak is said to be his landing site, over to mainland Asia after being expelled from heaven. Later on, colonial charts really popularized the name Adam's Bridge.
But for millions in India.
For millions in India, it remains unequivocally Ram Setu. It's a lived faith, not just a myth or a historical curiosity. Different names, same tide, there's deep meaning either way you look at it.
So we have these incredibly powerful narratives. How does science then approach such a striking formation? What natural processes could possibly explain something that looks so intentional?
Right. Well, if you delve into the geology, scientists propose a combination of natural processes. Things like sandbar formation, extensive reef growth over long periods, and crucially, significant global sea level changes over millennia.
Sea level changes, like from the ice ages.
Exactly. What's really fascinating is the role of past climate. During the last glacial period, that's roughly between 115,000 and 11,700 years ago, global sea levels were way lower, maybe as much as 120 meters lower than today.
Wow, 120 meters.
Yeah. So this dramatic drop actually exposed the entire Palk Strait. It became dry land, effectively creating a natural land bridge between India and Sri Lanka.
Makes sense.
Then, as the ice melted and sea levels rose during the Holocene epoch, the strait got submerged again. But the ridge itself seems to have re-emerged, or at least become very shallow again, from about 5,000 years ago up to the present. Possibly due to regional sea level falls or maybe some tectonic uplift.
And we've got modern tech looking at this too, right?
Yeah.
ISRO mapping.
Absolutely. Recent high-resolution mapping by ISRO, the Indian Space Research Organization, used data from NASA's ISAT-2 satellite. This was between 2018 and 2023. It provided the first really complete undersea map of the structure, and it confirms the bridge's continuity as a submerged ridge, lending weight to the idea it originated as a land connection. They even found 11 narrow channels within the structure, which seemed to play a key role in preserving it from sea waves.
But it's still quite striking how a natural ridge can end up looking so, well, purposeful.
It is uncannily purposeful looking, and that appearance is exactly what fuels the really intense debate.
Okay, let's get into that debate, because this is where the story takes a really interesting turn. Back in the early 2000s, there was a study by Dr. S. Badrinarayan. He was a former director of the Geological Survey of India, right?
That's correct. He conducted a study for the Indian government. He drilled boreholes along the bridge alignment.
And what did he find?
Well, he reported something quite startling. About 6 meters, so nearly 20 feet, below the sandy surface. He found a layer described as coral and boulders, and this layer was resting on top of loose sand, which in turn sat on hard rock about 13 to 16 feet deeper still.
Boulders on top of loose sand? That sounds odd geologically.
That was precisely Dr. Badrinarian's point. His interpretation was quite direct. He stated, and I'm quoting here loosely, that corals are found only on rocks and such hard surfaces.
Okay.
So he implied these corals and boulders couldn't have just grown there naturally on loose sand. They must have been deposited there by somebody.
Deposited as in placed there.
That was his implication. He also noted the boulders seemed different from the local marine formations, suggesting they were transported to that place to form a causeway. His conclusion was pretty unequivocal. The evidence, in his view, clearly establishes the fact that Ram Setu is very much man-made.
Wow. Okay, so a geologist, a former director of the GSI, claiming direct evidence of human construction. And this ties back to those legends, especially the floating stones we mentioned. It's almost like people look for a factual basis in these stories. Let's talk about those floating stones. Is there anything to that?
Well, it's interesting. People in the region around Rameswaram do still find lightweight, porous stones, usually coral or certain types of limestone.
Right.
And these stones can float, at least for a while, because they're so porous. One geologist, Dr. Ritesh Arya, has theorized that maybe a specific type of strong but light porous coral stone found mainly around Rameswaram could perhaps have been used deliberately, maybe to fill in the submerged parts of natural sandbars, creating a continuous path. It's a theory.
A theory trying to bridge the legend and some science. Okay. And then there was that Science Channel documentary, right? Ancient Land Bridge in 2017. That stirred things up quite a bit.
It certainly did. It featured scientists, mainly from American universities. They presented satellite imagery, geological samples, and they made the claim that while, quote, the sandbar may be natural, but what is sitting on top of it is not.
What was their evidence for that?
They asserted that rocks found on top of the sandbar were about 7,000 years old, while the sandbar itself underneath was apparently dated to only 4,000 years old, which, they argued, suggested the structure isn't natural but built by humans. They even called its construction a superhuman achievement.
Rocks older than the sand below, suggesting placement. Okay, that sounds compelling on the surface.
It does, but again, placing this in context, we need to look at the counter-arguments, and they came pretty quickly. NASA, whose satellite images were often used in these discussions, explicitly clarified something important. They said their images, while real, were being egregiously misinterpreted. They stated that, quote, remote sensing images cannot provide direct information about the origin or age of a chain of islands, and certainly cannot determine whether humans were involved.
So the images show a shape, but don't prove how it got that shape.
Exactly. And both the Geological Survey of India, GSI, and the Archaeological Survey of India, ASI, have generally favored a natural origin. GSI did a Project Rameswaram, back in 2002-2003, and found no clear evidence of an artificial structure. They tend to attribute it to natural processes, tectonic shifts, sedimentation, marine activity, reef growth, sea level changes, the things we discussed earlier.
And what about the rocks older than the sand claim from the documentary?
Well, geologist C.P. Rajendran was quite critical of that. He called the Science Channel claims abhorrent and basically post-truth. He emphasized that finding older rocks sitting on top of younger sediment is actually quite common in geology. It can happen through various natural transport mechanisms. So that finding in itself isn't proof of artificial construction. Extraordinary claims require rigorous, peer-reviewed evidence. It feels like a bridge of evidence is still very much under construction here.
Absolutely. And this isn't just some abstract debate for scientists and historians. This structure has very real-world impacts. You mentioned local lore about it being walkable once, until that storm in 1480. And for centuries, its shallowness has been a major obstacle for shipping, right? Forcing big ships to go all the way around Sri Lanka.
Hundreds of extra miles,
That's
yeah.
convenient, perhaps.
For ancient pilgrims, definitely inconvenient for modern sea captains.
And that inconvenience really brought the whole issue to a head, didn't it, with the Sethu Canal project?
Precisely. That became a major national flashpoint. In 2005, the Indian government approved this huge multi-million-dollar project. The basic idea was simple. Dredge a deep channel through the shallow waters near Ram Setu. This would allow large ships to pass directly between the Gulf of Mannar and the Palk Strait.
Saving a lot of time and fuel.
Exactly. Cutting off maybe 250 to 400 kilometers, which translates to 30 or 36 hours of voyage time. The hope was to boost regional trade, help ports like Tuticorin and Rameshwaram, maybe even benefit local fishermen.
Sounds like a straightforward development goal on paper. But the reaction.
Oh, the reaction was immediate and intense. It ignited widespread controversy from multiple angles. First, there was the religious outcry. For millions, especially Hindus, the idea of dredging Rama Setu was sacrilegious. They saw it as harming a sacred structure directly linked to Lord Rama.
So campaigns like Save Ram Setu.
Yes, major legal and political campaigns. They argued it would inflict a permanent scar on the Hindu faith. Some arguments were very strong, like, without Lord Rama and Ramayana, Hindu religion will be a husk.
A deeply felt religious objection. What else?
Then you had the ecological concerns. Environmentalists raised serious alarms. They warned about potentially catastrophic damage to the fragile coral reefs in the area, which are quite unique, and the impact on rare marine life, things like dugongs, sea turtles, plus the local fisheries that depend on that ecosystem.
And dredging itself. It's not a one-time thing, is it?
No, especially not there. They pointed out that the Palk Bay is what's called a sedimentation sink, meaning sand and silt naturally accumulate there. So the channel would require continuous, costly dredging just to keep it open, plus the potential use of underwater blasting during construction could just devastate the marine environment.
There was also an argument about tsunami protection, wasn't there?
Yes, that became a key point, especially after the devastating 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami. Many argued that Rama Setu acts as a natural breakwater, offering some protection to the Indian coastline, particularly Kerala and Tamil Nadu, from the full force of tsunamis. The idea was that removing or breaching it could make those coastal regions much more vulnerable in the future.
So religious, ecological, safety concerns. What about the economics? Did that stack up?
That was question 2. Critics argued about the actual economic viability. The proposed depth of the canal might only accommodate smaller vessels, maybe up to 30,000 deadweight tonnage, which limits its utility compared to major global canals like Suez or Panama. For the really big container ships, the distance saved might be negligible anyway, and the estimated annual maintenance cost was significant, around $7 million USD per year.
So it ended up in legal and political limbo?
Pretty much. The project faced numerous court stays, fierce political debates. Governments changed their stance, withdrew affidavits, proposed alternative alignments that avoided the main structure. It really forces you to ask that difficult question. Is the potential economic efficiency worth the potential cultural and ecological price?
It's a stark example of how these ancient narratives and natural features collide with modern development goals. Stepping back again, let's think about the deeper meanings here. This debate, it really does go beyond just science versus religion, doesn't it? For many Hindus, as you said, the Ramayana isn't just an allegory, it's seen as a historical record. And that belief, it really challenges our standard timelines of human history.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
If you take the Treaty Yuga time frame seriously, 1.7 to maybe 2.165 million years ago, for Lord Rama, that completely upends conventional archaeology and anthropology. Human civilization, as we usually define it, with cities and agriculture, is maybe 5,000 or 6,000 years old, maybe a bit more. So this raises that intriguing question about the vanara. Could that word, often translated as monkey, actually be a combination of vana, meaning forest, and nara, meaning man?
Forest men.
Possibly referring to an early human ancestor, like Homo erectus, who was around 1.7 million years ago, and was capable of tool use and group cooperation. It's a fascinating, if speculative, reinterpretation that tries to reconcile the epic timeframe with paleoanthropology.
And it doesn't stop there. The Ramayana mentions mechanical contrivances for moving huge rocks. And you have other epics talking about vimanas, these flying machines, Has that fueled speculation too?
Oh, definitely. These descriptions have led some scholars and enthusiasts to investigate claims of highly advanced ancient technologies. Some even look for references to things like anti-gravity in old Sanskrit texts, trying to explain how such feats could have been possible.
Which naturally leads to ideas about lost civilizations.
Exactly. Could these stories be echoes of a forgotten, advanced ancient civilization? Some people connect Rama Setu to theories about a lost continent in the Indian Ocean. In Hindu texts, there's talk of Kumari Kundam, which has some resonance, oddly enough, with the 19th century geological concept of Lemuria proposed by Philip Sclater, though for different reasons.
And isn't there an ongoing study looking into this?
Yes, the Indian government launched a significant underwater archaeological study in 2021. Its official aims include trying to determine definitively if Rama Setu is natural or artificial, and also, intriguingly, to look for any submerged habitations in the vicinity. One scientist involved was quoted as being 100% sure we will find archaeological remains. We'll have to see what they find. But it highlights how two truths can genuinely share one shoreline: the scientific story told by geology and the cultural memory embedded in these epic narratives.
And that connection extends beyond the bridge itself, into Sri Lanka. You mentioned Adam's Peak, but there are sites linked directly to the Ramayana story too, aren't there?
Absolutely. Places like Sitha Ilia or Ashok Vatika near Nuwara Ilia in Sri Lanka's hill country. These are revered in tradition as the locations where Sita was held captive by Ravana. They are active pilgrimage sites today. You also have the incredible rock fortress of Sigiriya. While mainstream archaeology dates it to the 5th century CE, some folk traditions connect it to Ravana's palace. It just shows that pilgrimage maps and archaeology maps don't always perfectly overlap, but both hold deep meaning for people.
Which brings us back to navigating these different layers of meaning. How do we approach the claims and counterclaims responsibly?
I think it requires a spirit of, let's say, gentle myth-busting, without being dismissive of the cultural significance, which is immense. For instance, the satellite images. Yes, they show a linear feature, but as NASA pointed out, that doesn't automatically equal man-made. Natural processes like currents, reef growth along fault lines, they can create remarkably straight alignments over time.
And the older rocks on younger sand point.
Again, geologically plausible through natural means. It's not the smoking gun some might wish it to be. What the scientific method really demands for a claim as extraordinary as a millions of years old or even thousands of years old, massive bridge, is rigorous, independent evidence, multiple lines of it.
Like what specifically?
You'd want consistent dating of materials all along the structure. You'd look for evidence of tool use, quarry sites where materials might have come from, consistent construction signatures or techniques across its entire 30-mile span, things that unequivocally point to large-scale, organized human or proto-human activity matching the proposed time frame. That level of evidence hasn't emerged yet, at least not in a way that satisfies mainstream scientific consensus.
So, the mystery in a scientific sense remains. But for anyone listening who's inspired to experience this place, where these ancient stories meet modern science and debate, where can they go?
Well, the main access points are at Dhanushkodi and the temple town of Ramaswaram on the Indian side. Sometimes glass-bottom boat tours are available, offering a glimpse of the submerged shoals, depending on weather and visibility. Just being Dhanushkodi Point, seeing the Bay of Bengal meet the Indian Ocean, it's quite a unique and powerful sensory experience in itself.
And important to be respectful if you visit.
Absolutely crucial. Remember, this is a fragile ecosystem and a sacred region for many. Follow all reef rules, definitely avoid collecting any corals or searching for floating stones, and always be mindful of the local tides and weather conditions, which can change rapidly. Basically, wander responsibly.
Wander responsibly. I like that.
You know, standing between the temple bells and the tide charts, Rama Setu seems to ask us a rather humble question. Can we hold reverence in one hand and genuine curiosity in the other? And can we somehow cross this water together, respecting both? It's just such a powerful reminder that history is rarely simple. And that intersection of culture, belief, and scientific inquiry, it can constantly reshape how we understand our world.
Yeah. Perhaps the true marvel of Rama Setu isn't just what it is, whether it's purely natural, a divinely inspired bridge, or maybe even evidence of some forgotten ancient engineering feat. Perhaps the marvel is how it continues to ignite such passionate debate, even today, how it pushes us to question established timelines, to consider unexpected possibilities about our planet's history, and maybe even our own origins. Thank you for being on this trip with us. Stay curious, stay grounded, and stay tuned for the next deep dive into another fascinating topic.